AMD nor NVIDIA seem to care about its users. Sometimes, maybe other times. Maybe that's what drove people that actually seem to care, like EVGA, out of the market completely. Sometimes it's NVIDIA that seems to not care, delay things, pricing is always an issue. Other times it's AMD. Like we've been talking recently about the 7900 XT and the XTX and various cooling issues and performance issues that have come up with their particular reference models especially. Now, there has been new AMD drivers, but some of these issues cannot be fixed with drivers. Here's an example of a Reddit user, and this is actually gaining in some popularity, where his hardware, his physical cooler, seems to actually be the problem here. He posts that he's having 110-degree junction temperatures while playing Modern Warfare 2. Now, you may think, well, a GPU is designed to go that high, but the problem is when those high temperatures aren't always obviously apparent on other models, maybe that have different coolers, and if it's affecting the performance of the GPU. Thermal throttling is a very real thing. And even though we're talking about AMD in this particular case, NVIDIA did the same thing. Do you guys remember with the RTX 3080, 3090, the GDDR6X VRAM got really, really hot, and on many of those GPUs, and early on when I got those GPUs, mine also had these issues. The VRAM would hit those 110 temperatures very, very easily. It's already hot, and part of the problem was due to the thermal pads just not being great quality, not being applied particularly well. And this happened not only on the NVIDIA Founder Edition GPUs, but also on some third-party AIB models, just showing that they didn't really care to either test them or have high enough quality thermal pads, and thus proper application of thermal pads. Many users found out that the GPUs were overheating and they never knew why. Of course, a lot of it was due with mining that taxed it the most, but a lot of users that also used it for like video rendering. I remember I was rendering like a 6K video where the VRAM really gets taxed and the fans were spinning out of control. The GPU core seemed to be cool enough, but the VRAM was getting way too hot. So that's another indication on the NVIDIA side. Here with AMD, it seems like there's some similar issues happening with the thermal pads just not really being all that great. This other user here, he says he collected some data on GPU temperatures, hotspot temperatures, and the delta temperatures for some Radeon 7900 XTX. A 110-degree hotspot with thermal throttling should not be normal. So far, only the reference designs are affected. And then he posts some of the data here showing that really it shouldn't be normal. It's giving you less performance where that should be kept under control. And it's funny, a Reddit comment on this same post also says it's a serious problem and affects way more people than the connector on the 4090 that was having those sort of overheating issues, the melting issues that maybe got blown a little bit out of proportion. And they say you can limit this by limiting the power, but at the end of the day, you paid a pretty expensive price for the GPU, so you shouldn't have to limit any type of power or anything that can actually affect performance. But this shows you both on the NVIDIA and AMD side, there are issues that pop up and sometimes they do get blown out of proportion, and it takes a while sometimes for these companies to actually respond. So that user also tried to do an RMA request to get his GPU switched out. He says, as we know so far, quite many people have problems with the reference 7900 XTX cards reaching 110-degree junction temperatures, 100% fan speed, and still losing performance due to downclocking from the thermal throttling. This is the reply that they got from AMD. The temperatures are normal. The temperatures are normal. If there are any issues, please contact us back. Thanks for contacting AMD. Well, that's certainly not very helpful because the GPU is downclocking itself, thermal throttling, and the AIB models, some of them don't seem to display the same problems. So the AMD rep here just did not seem to care at all. However, I do care. So remember to subscribe, smash that like button so we can reach 50,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And then they do go on to further say there's another user that AMD said they could return the GPU for an RMA, but he would not be able to get a refund because the GPU was opened. Which, I mean, if you're in America, it's usual to be able to open something and then return it. Usually, no questions asked. Like if you buy it from, a Best Buy, Micro Center, some places don't have the same policy. Maybe like Newegg for a GPU, they're not going to take them back if you open them. But it seems like AMD has a similar policy here. If you open it, you're not able to return it, which is not really the most consumer friendly practice anyway to begin with. But many other companies do this, and a few, of course, are the exception, like those that I mentioned, which do let you return it if you do open and change your mind for whatever reason. Now, the problem here is, what if many of these reference models also are affected by this, and he just gets another copy of it that has the exact same issues, therefore leaving them without a GPU for a while, wasting his time, etc. Sounds here like he would rather just return that one, get his money back, and maybe get like an AIB 7900 XTX or maybe an NVIDIA GPU or something else entirely. So going a little bit deeper into this, Der Bauer apparently discovered with some investigation that the issue happens a lot with the mounting pressure, thermal paste quality, and the thermal pads used by the cards. When new ones are applied, the card is remounted, overheating issues are eliminated. But this is something that we really shouldn't have to do, and this actually reminds me of last generation that I mentioned with NVIDIA. Early on, a lot of people repasted their RTX 3000 GPUs like the 3080 and 3090 because of these exact issues. In my opinion, if you're buying a GPU that expensive, they should come out of the factory with better thermal performance and better care in the build quality. This is just poor build quality and poor customer service. If you tell me it's normal to hit these junction temperatures, and then if you repaste it and all of a sudden the temperatures are not that high and you're getting more performance, you can actually objectively take a look at this and prove that it's not normal. You're supposed to get all of the performance that the GPU affords you with a properly applied, thermal paste and thermal pads and the cooler mounting pressure. So to say that you're going to hit 110 doesn't make any sense at all, where there may be other users who do not experience that and technically will get better performance and of course less noise. Remember, these reference models like this, if they're screaming at 100% with the fans, that's not going to be great at all. If you're paying for an expensive GPU, I think you want a premium experience, not only with the smooth and high frame rates, but you want something with a beefy cooler. All of a sudden, those big NVIDIA coolers don't seem as bad anymore when they're doing the job that they're meant to do, even though they're pretty large for the case. It's funny that AMD made a big deal about their reference design fitting in cases and only have two PCIe 8-pin power compared to NVIDIA's adapter and NVIDIA's really big GPUs, but at the end of the day, what's the purpose of having a small cooler design if these designs are overheating the cards and not properly applied? Now, if they're properly applied, they're still going to be a little bit louder than normal. Then maybe a better AIB cooler, like a larger one, but it's not going to be as bad as a lot of these users seem to be reporting. And then, of course, after a while, that same user did update his Reddit thread that AMD contacted him and said they were going to resolve the issue. But of course, after it starts to gain attention like this, you expect the company to act like that, because then they have to go and clean up any type of like bad publicity that may be coming out, any type of like negative behavior. But I hope that they start to apply this every case if people are having these really high junction temperatures, because it really shouldn't necessarily be normal and accepted if you can prove that by proper hardware application of the cooler, thermal pads, and thermal paste, you can actually have much cooler, quieter performance and not downclock or thermal throttle. It's pretty easy. Just do a comparison like that and you'll see that there is a difference. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So AMD kind of skirting around the issue is just showing that they, just like NVIDIA, not every time, but sometimes, really don't seem to care about the consumer unless it comes back to bite them and people are complaining. And then they do this whole big charade, the theatrics of actually making it seem like they do care and wanting to change things. It's one thing for like the sales sales and marketing guys to do one thing, and then maybe the technicians and engineers to do something else. And if that product doesn't come together to fulfill the promise that everybody as a collective make, then people are going to have a bad hardware experience. Just like when I mentioned with the driver issues that little by little are getting fixed, but sometimes it's a little bit too late because people have already bought these GPUs and they get disappointed and they have these issues that sometimes can't even be fixed by drivers, and they may be pushed more to their competitor side as people may jump over to NVIDIA, or even from NVIDIA to AMD when there were certain issues. But generally, because NVIDIA has much bigger market share and sometimes the illusion of better build quality in a lot of these products, more people are likely to jump from AMD or not even buy them and go straight into NVIDIA, creating a problem for AMD, not gaining more market share and therefore not being able to have competitive products in the future that can give us a healthier GPU environment. All right, guys, so let me know what you think down below. Have you had any issues with these GPUs? What do you think about AMD's reaction? Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.